It's the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA and
Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFOs, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. This week's episode, the Bigfoot Power Hour. We're going to talk about a couple of Bigfoot things in a very casual setting. A little more casual than our usual episodes where we do a lot of research and get real serious and stuff. This time around, we're just going to bullshit about Bigfoot, because why the heck not?
yeah, we get so serious and shit, bro.
Yeah, super serial. First, before we get started, there's been some pretty big news articles in our realm of topics in the last, month or so. We haven't recorded because of the holidays and a couple other things that came up, so it's been a while since we've done an episode. But there's a few things that I kind of wanted to talk about before we get to Bigfoot. Starting with, I'm sure anybody listening to this show had to have heard of this, but in case you haven't, the former Israeli head of Defense Ministry Space Directorate. He's the head of I guess you would say the Defense Ministry Space Directorate. Anyways, he said that we are in contact with the Galactic Federation of Aliens and that Trump was going to reveal the existence of these aliens, but they asked him not to. And at the last minute, he decided not to because that sounds like something Trump would totally do. Have you heard of this one, ETA?
I have, and it fills me full of all sorts of ideas and thoughts and wondering of what is really happening. Is this real? Because the guy definitely held that position within the Israeli government. It's pretty easy to verify. What that position does, I have no freaking clue. I'm assuming, because I know that there's intelligence satellites, spy satellites, and satellites that have all sorts of instruments on it to spy on other people and observe all kinds of matter of things. But so I understand that there is a need to defend against that type of stuff, because there's all the other governments capable of doing it are doing it, I would assume. So, but besides that, I'm not sure what that job would entail. I mean, unless what he's saying is to be taken, at 100% truth, which I would like to, but I also, at the same time, I have an opinion of what's going on right now in the world, how we're being divided and such. And I think it benefits a certain group of people, which I'll come out straight out and say, I think it's the world bankers. I think we're being pushed towards a one world government, and we're being divided and separated in a way to destroy culture, to bring us towards the acceptance of a structure like that. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of changes you'd have to make, in human civilization in order to make us accept a structure like that, a one world government, what have you. But I remember some time ago, earlier in my divings down the rabbit hole, as it were, I remember coming across a theory that somebody had been claiming that a UFO event was going to be used, a fake UFO event was going to be used to basically force us into a one world government, being in contact with a intergalactic federation or whatever the hell it was. I guess that could be something that would, make us figuratively want to pull our head out of our ass and come together as one, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, actually, and that's more for, we could do a whole episode on that topic. That gets pretty crazy pretty fast.
We could do a whole series.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned, is this like soft disclosure being used, to kind of set up the public's subconscious to accept what's coming down the pipeline? You know what I mean? Like I said, though, is it real? Is it not? That would make some sense, I suppose, if they could pull it off. I don't know what technologies would be used if it is fake to pull it off, but if it is real, holy mother of God, yeah, that would change every damn thing that we thought about ourselves. I would, for most people, you know what I mean? Not for us, because we're much more into this type of stuff, but most people like don't take this kind of thing into consideration at all. And even when they do, it's more of like a, they're enjoying a sci-fi film or something like that. It's probably their perspective.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is something to dabble in, not to take serious.
Well, think about some of the past case files we've talked about. Half the time, the witnesses pull out a gun and try to shoot the UFOs. I mean,
I can't say in certain circumstances I wouldn't do the same thing. I might just react like, oh my God, like I'm so like startled by what I'm observing. I might. I don't know. I'm still an ape too.
You just reminded me of, are you familiar with that? Ronald Reagan in his speeches, he said a few times, he had this thing he liked to say. He said, imagine if we were faced with some kind of power outside of our own world, how quickly we could get over our differences, or something similar. I mean, along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
I think the vast majority, if not all of our listeners, are probably familiar with that speech because that is a famous one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, all right, Ronald Reagan said that. That's not nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether it was being used to, like I like to say a lot, set up the public subconscious towards a certain ends to means, like for them to react a certain way to something, if it wasn't that, and if he was trying to be truthful, what have you, then that's not nothing. That's what he said was quite substantial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, he can't come straight out and say for instance, he was aware of aliens and they were in contact. Because if we are in contact with him now, I would imagine it's probably something that's been going on for a little bit at least.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know, but maybe he was trying to just subtly let us know without taking on the responsibility of dropping the beans or whatever.
Another possibility that I think this is not the case, but I think this is a good possibility in certain cases, is that it could be like a black ops thing. So in other words, we're trying to psych out the Russians or whoever to make them think that we know about aliens, but they don't know about the aliens because there are no aliens. We're just messing with their heads, and then they're going to spend a lot of resources trying to find out what we know when in fact there's nothing to find out. That's I don't know how plausible that is, but it seems to fit certain scenarios. Like, for example, Roswell, where they say, oh yeah, we totally have a crash saucer, and then they retract it, and then throughout the years they keep flip-flopping, almost as if they're egging on other intelligence agencies. But I don't know. You'd have to ask the governments about that.
Yeah, I would have to understand more about how those intelligence agencies interact with each other. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure there's a code of conduct of sorts. You know what I mean? I'm sure that there's plenty of situations where there are no rules, I would imagine, but there's also a certain way that they operate too. Which, if I was more knowledgeable on that, then I would get it. But yeah, I don't.
Right. All right, let's move along to the next news item that I wanted to talk about. Now, this is probably the most controversial one, but there was a picture released that was supposedly of some kind of like flying cube or something, and it pretty much blew up the UFO world, or people who are into this kind of stuff, on Twitter and on forums and everywhere. You could see it. Now, the funny thing, though, is that the picture does not look like a cube. It kind of looks like a Mylar Batman balloon. But the problem with that is that this was taken on an iPhone from the pilot. I think it was an F-A-18 pilot or something, supposedly at 35,000 feet. And those little Mylar balloons that you buy from the grocery store, first of all, they don't float up that high, really. I mean, maybe, I guess. Second of all, you imagine you're screaming along in, a supersonic fighter plane, and you're going to take a picture of this itty bitty little Mylar balloon. You wouldn't probably even see it. I guess your instruments might notice it, but I imagine it'd be very difficult to get a photo of it.
So
right?
the balloons you're talking about like those ones that you'll buy like at the supermarket. Sometimes you'll see them hanging there off to the side.
Yeah, and, for the kids' parties and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of times like they might be metallic in like the background color or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it'd have to be for a pilot to notice that going the speeds I'm assuming they're going, which is fucking fast.
Right.
How could they even track it? I mean, will they even notice it? It's too small. It's not substantial enough for them to even pay attention, I would imagine.
But here's the real thing.
Take a picture.
Yeah, go ahead. Right.
No, yeah.
So here's what I wanted to mention, though, is I I didn't want to go too much into detail about that because so many other people have. I feel like I don't really have anything to add to the conversation. But there's a journalist named MJ Banias who covers a lot of UFO topics. He put a quote, or he was talking about this on Twitter, and he's had some comments about it. And at the end of his comments, he said, "For the record, I'm Batman." And that kind of reminded me a little bit of something. Does that jog your memory a little bit there?
Yes, it does. A certain slideshow we may have covered.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if this whole thing is just some sort of mindfuckery. And this, maybe MJ Banias is somehow involved with the disinformation, and he's just sort of giving us a wink, wink, nudge, nudge,
That's what I'm worried about, man. Yeah. It's all a hoax. It's all, and like I said, the only thing that I could think that would benefit the people at the top, that I perceive to be in control, at the top of all societies, the bankers, how would it benefit them? I'm always asking that question whenever, stuff that might relate to their benefit. I suppose I'm talking in roundabout fucking terms, but how would this benefit them? And the one world government thing is the only thing I could come up with.
Oh, I was sort of just watching the story, but then when I saw that comment, I was like, "What? You can't say that."
Yeah. Wait a minute, man. Yeah. Wait 1 minute, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was a big red flag right there.
The last one I wanted to talk about before we get on to Bigfoot was in 2019, a radio telescope in Australia picked up an unusual signal. We didn't find out about it until now, or until recently, because it picks up all this data, and then the data has to be analyzed after the fact by computers and people and stuff. So just because it picked it up a year or two ago or whenever doesn't mean we're going to know about it until they get around to digesting the data. So they picked up a 980 hertz signal that was coming from Proxima Centauri. That's the closest star to our solar system, and it's about 4.3 light years away. And according to what I read, they were able to rule out a terrestrial source for this. So they think that it was from there, not here. And because it was a narrow band, not broadband, they don't think it was a natural source. So a natural source is going to have a wide range of frequencies that it's going to put out. A narrow band is something that can really only be done using technology, or at least that's what I've been told by the all the sources I've seen this in. I'm not an expert on radio astronomy, so I can't say for sure. But one of the things they used to narrow it down, for example, is that when they observed it for 3 hours in the same spot, and in one spot. So if it was like an airplane or whatever, it would be moving around. It wouldn't be stationary. So they use things like that to sort of weed out signals that are good and bad. Now, we don't know for a fact that this was an extraterrestrial signal. They're not saying that at all. At this point, all they're saying is that this signal is highly unusual and it warrants further investigation. That's as far as they're going right now. But I can't help but get excited about something like this that seems so very unnatural coming from the closest star. It's really not that far away compared to some other objects out there.
Yeah, and I ask again, is this another part of the plot?
Right, you never know.
I'll stop. But no, this is pretty damn interesting, especially because it comes from the closest solar system to us, right?
Right.
And man, if there was something to communicate with out there, then it would be pretty damn convenient that it would be coming out of that solar system, I suppose. But yeah, I've seen some lectures and a couple documentaries on that solar system, and it's pretty interesting, I think. Because don't they have? There's one planet that is supposedly within the Goldilocks zone, I think, in that solar system, but they do believe that it doesn't have an atmosphere or anything because I think they've recorded solar flares coming from that solar system, from that star, that are bigger than anything we've recorded. So they think that it's unlikely that the atmosphere is as complete as ours, I suppose, I'm no expert. I don't know very much at all about this type of shit. Let me just go ahead and backpedal just a little bit. But I do find it wildly interesting just because of the possibilities. I don't know. Everything in space is like, to me, it sets the imagination wild just because of the possibilities, man. You know, it makes me excited. I get real excited. I'm very excited. You know.
Yeah, I forget the exact details. I thought maybe they detected the planet around the Proxima Centauri or something, but they think it's tidal locked to the star, meaning that the same side always faces the star or something. There was something like that they think that it's unlikely life would be there, but we're constantly finding life on Earth in places that we thought were impossible. And our definition of life may be more narrow than what's actually out there. And well, I mean, it has to be really, if you think about it, because
we don't know
what we know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like Donald Rumsfeld used to say, you know, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And
that's one of my favorite quotes of all time, you know? Because well, the dumb thing about that quote, well, with what? I think I know what you're about to say.
Yeah, you know where I'm going with that. Fool me once, shame on you. Yeah, it's right up there with that one.
I thought you were either going to mention that or something about strategery.
Oh yes, well, no, I like that. That one's all right, but it ain't no fool me once. You know, it ain't classic.
Yeah. Well, all right, let's get this straight. How does it go? Fool me once, you know, shame on me, right? If fool me twice, you ain't gonna fool me again.
Yeah. Or is it shame on you? Is it fool me once, shame on you?
Did he get that wrong too?
I don't remember.
I don't know.
I'd have to look it up.
Whatever. Dude, that guy was a part of Skull and Bones. I refuse to believe that he was actually that dumb. I think he was part of a character he was putting on, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know, but Dick Cheney did shoot a motherfucker in the face with a shotgun while they're duck hunting, so I don't know.
Fucking crazy administration that was, right? Damn, dude.
What's even more crazier is, like, I look back at it with a certain level of fondness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
the simple
what's
times
going on right now. Yeah,
when politicians, all they did was just shoot people in the face, you know? So much simpler.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and not only do the politicians shoot the person in the face, but that person actually comes out and apologizes for being shot in the face.
Right.
What grand, you know, theatrics, you know?
Well,
it's
how powerful is that guy that he can shoot somebody in the face and they apologize to him, you know?
Well, all right. So like Dick Cheney, if there ever was a person with the definition of resting asshole face, then I think that's him. You know what I mean? Like, but you got to hand it to the guy. He definitely was very good at using his ties to his own benefit, you know, and also benefiting his own constituents, as it were, people that he was, you know, tied to, you know, through business and stuff, you know. But I digress.
That's a whole other topic.
I digress.
Don't get me started on how that war appeared to me to be just an excuse to funnel money, but I mean that ties into 9/11 and like it goes on and on. We better not get started on that.
And this is we haven't even got to what this episode is about yet.
I know. Bigfoot. All right, let's move on to Bigfoot.
Yeah,
everybody.
Let's stay focused.
Yeah. Well, what the heck? We got nothing else to do.
Yeah. We talk about Bigfoot.
I'm in California. We're all locked down here, or at least we're not supposed to go nowhere. It's you know, whatever. So what the hell else am I going to do with my time? All right, so let's get started with the Bigfoot.
Harry and the Hendersons. Yes. Which, by the way, Harry and the Hendersons, I don't know if my childhood would have been the same without that movie. I loved that freaking movie, especially the end where they're trying to take him back to his like Sasquatch family. Remember?
Yeah.
And he pokes he makes that big dent in the top of their roof, and then starts going woo, like he starts like, you know, mimicking like a police siren, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know why that sticks out in my head, but like that's like the first scene I typically think of, you know. But there's so many other, you know, quotable scenes in that movie. I'll probably mention Harry and the Hendersons a couple times throughout this conversation, just because it was such an iconic movie for me. Let alone, like, you know, not even mentioning you know, my interest in Sasquatch and Sasquatch type, you know, figures that are mentioned throughout the world, really, whether it be Yeti or whatever it's called. You know what I mean?
Wasn't the dad was played by John Lithgow, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think he played an awesome freaking character in that movie.
You can't go wrong.
The spin that he put on, like, you know, your typical American dad or what have you, his own personality. Well met, sir. Well met.
Yeah, he does a good job most of the time.
Yeah. Well, let's get into what we're actually talking about though now. Like,
oh yeah. All right. So Bigfoot. Anybody unfamiliar? Which I find that hard to believe. But the sightings seem to be concentrated in the Pacific Northwest region. So we're talking about, you know, Northern California, Oregon, Washington, thereabouts.
The big hot spot is the Olympic Peninsula.
You mean like in Greece?
No. The Olympic, and the Olympic Forest right there up in Washington, northwest.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Isn't that called the Olympic Peninsula? Right?
I have no idea. Is it?
I know it's the Olympic. Am I brain farting like a motherfucker here? I know it's the Olympic Forest of some sort, isn't it? Here, let me look this shit up.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with any Olympic. I was just being a smartass when I said Greece because, you know, Olympia and all that bullshit.
Yeah, whatever.
Because, you know, I'm not familiar with that geography, so I was just kind of playing it off like I am. Like, oh, yeah, I totally know what that is, but I'm going to make a stupid joke.
No, yeah, the Olympic National Park, Olympic Peninsula. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You made me freaking second guess what I already knew. Yeah, no, it's that's an amazing freaking area. Because it's, I mean, anybody who's familiar with it, if you've ever been there, like, holy crap, is there some beautiful scenery. The forests up there, you know, the original old forests, you know what I mean? Stuff that hasn't been clear cut, you know what I mean? From what I understand, I think that's where the largest organism in the world is, that one fungus that coats the bottom of the forest. I think it's in the Olympic National Park. I think it's like a fungus that coats the forest, the ground of the forest. And the reason why they think that they know that it's one continuous organism, basically, or series of organisms, really, right? Is that they were actually able to hook up electrical probes. Like I don't remember how far apart. It was really freaking far apart, dude. But like one end of a forest to the other, I guess you could say, right? And they were able to send electrical like pulses like through the fungi and like read it at the other end. Like I'm the way I'm describing it does not do it justice at all, but I always found that really freaking interesting. And if there is a Bigfoot, I would imagine that it has, you know, evolved to use this to its benefit. You know what I mean?
Scientists kind of terrify me. You know, how can we investigate this fungus? Let's fucking electrocute it.
It was very, very, very low voltage or amperage or whatever is important wattage. I don't know.
Not to a little tiny fungus.
Yeah, well, you know, yeah, you might be right about that. Every single time they're like, "What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck?
The hell is that?"
Yeah. Like, who knows what kind of screams a tree actually makes while it's being cut down, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I got a little dark there.
That's the main area of the sightings is the Pacific Northwest, which I don't live quite far enough north, but I do live in Northern California, and I always hope when I'm driving through the woods that, hey, maybe I'll spot a Bigfoot. You never know. It's possible.
So let me do a quick little shout out. All right. I won't mention his whole name, but I have a buddy that I grew up with. His name is Randy. Mm-hmm. He lives on the Olympic Peninsula, right up by the, there's like a Crescent Bay, I think is what it's called. Yep. But he works in a school district up there. And I was actually just talking to him earlier today. I like to do a shout out. What's up, Randy? If you ever hear this, you know. So he lives in the midst of that hot spot. Like everybody around him, it seems like they have a story of some sort or another relating to Bigfoot. You know what I mean? I remember when I mentioned to him that we were doing this episode, he was like, "Oh yeah, bro, like dude, this is the hot spot of the world, bro." Like you know, like and like it was just like a matter of fact. You know what I mean? Yeah. It wasn't even something that was up for debate. You know what I mean? To him, it kind of seemed like you know, he was putting on a front that, you know, he didn't really believe it. He wasn't that into it, but there was a certain level of like acceptance to the story. You know what I mean? Like, and that's one thing that like, there's a couple of things that compel me, towards my either believing this or not believing it. You know what I mean? The Sasquatch just in general. There are so damn many cases of people either saying that they came face to face with a Sasquatch or they observed from afar or whatever. And it doesn't matter. Like it's all around the world. It's not just this country. They may be called something different, but a Bigfoot is what we're talking about. You know, for the most part.
My favorite pseudonym is skunk ape, and that's I guess used in southeast areas like Florida.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's my personal favorite.
Yeah, yeah. But no matter where you go, there's likely to be some kind of a Bigfoot story. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be necessarily even like in the mountains, you know, because I mean, you go to Canada, there's supposed Bigfoot sightings everywhere. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Alaska, I mean, obviously it's still in the United States, but I almost consider Alaska like its own thing. You know what I mean? But anyways, freaking the consistency of the number of reports it's substantial. It's something to pay attention to. There's something going on.
Right.
One of these stories is true. You know what I mean? Somebody is, there's at least a certain percentage of these people that claim to have these sightings that are telling the truth. They're genuine about it. And I do believe it because I've seen people give testimonies where, man, this person believes what the hell they're saying. Like whatever they saw something, whether it was a bear, maybe, you know, or something that they just, you know, misconstrued as being Bigfoot. They believe what they're saying, you know, and so I don't believe that there are that many good actors out there. You know what I mean? Like it's some people really are genuine about it, but then other times, like you see like narratives like, all right, yeah, me and my cousin went hunting last weekend, right? And I don't know why I'm doing a redneck accent, but whatever.
we got rednecks up here just like anywhere else.
I'm a little bit redneck myself, but so you hear like the narrative in a story reoccur time and time again, where like my cousin told me he saw a Bigfoot, you know, and he saw tracks. Right, we went up there and we looked for the tracks, didn't find them. I went home. My cousin went back the next day and found the tracks, and then he took a plaster casing, you know, of it or something like that. You know, like, well, I mean, that's not a very credible situation there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I know I'm being very general about it, but that's because I'm describing the totality of these type of stories that I've heard, you know, and it's not like I've heard, you know, all of them by no means. Obviously there's too many, right? But it is something I pay attention to at the very least, a little bit, you know, throughout my life, because it's something I do really enjoy. I enjoy Bigfoot. You know, there's so much nostalgia surrounding Bigfoot. You know what I mean? Then there's a lot of culture. You know what I mean? Like Bigfoot people are a particular type of people. They're the ones that are really into it. You know what I mean? Do they have a title for the? I mean, I know we got cryptozoologists, but for specialists in Bigfoot, do you have something like ufologists or something, like maybe Bigfootologists? You know what? I don't know. I don't think I've ever looked into that before. Let me type into the Google machine here. Let me see. Oh, okay. Now, yeah, it's the city that I guess there's a Bigfoot specialist in the city that I live in, which makes no fucking sense because there are no forests. Like, it's all desert.
Bigfoot ain't hiding anywhere around you.
No, sir. I don't know where the hell he would hide.
Maybe he burrows in the sand? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a subterranean lizard people fucking Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't see anything coming up right. Yeah, I wonder if there is a name for that specific type of specialist. I'd be willing to bet there is. Somebody's came up with some kind of a tag.
You bring up a good point. I kind of feel the same way. Like, I'm not super invested in the idea that Bigfoot actually exists, but there are so many credible sightings that it kind of makes you take a step back and think there has to be something to some of this. It can't all be hoaxes, you know?
Okay, so we know in the fossil record there was Gigantopithecus. We know that did exist. That is a real thing. We have the fossils to prove it.
He was actually a mind boggle on a previous episode.
Yes. So we know that was a thing for sure. It is a reality. So, I mean, there is that one string of possibility. Like, is this a species that did not in fact go extinct and is so good at evading us that we just haven't come across the motherfucker yet? You know what I mean? Now in the ocean, I absolutely believe that is a reality, and there's no doubt about it, because it's not too uncommon to pull up pictures on the internet of some fisher like in the Pacific or something like that pulled up something weird as hell in their nets. You know what I mean? That that was previously, classified as an extinct species, which it happens. It does happen. Now with pollution and stuff, I do venture to assume that there probably are plenty of species in the ocean for sure that probably went extinct that we thought was already extinct, but we just didn't have the opportunity to observe them, But yeah, in the ocean, like I said, I think the possibility for that is much, much greater, obviously, because of how little we've explored compared to the forests. But like, I mean, there are sections of forest even in North America that might still be dense enough, I guess, to where things can hide. But we've never found bones. I've never seen any real example of a bone or anything that has been presented to, they can say that this is not a human bone, it's not a bear bone, it's not an elk, it's not a moose, whatever, whatever other large creature that might produce bones like us, I've never seen an example of because what is the name for people who specialize in bones and stuff? There's certain kind of archaeologist. I forget what it is.
Is it paleontology?
Is it paleontology? I don't know, but you might be right. But it's a pretty well established area of research. These guys know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So if there was something that definitely wasn't human, definitely wasn't bear, and was within the primate line, I think they would be able to figure it out that, hey, this is something that obviously isn't a fossil. It's a bone of something that died recently, at least, and because the bone is still there, right? And it's not, this could be a Bigfoot. I've never seen that kind of evidence. You know what I mean?
Well, on the other hand, though, there are very large sections of forests in America and Canada that are largely unexplored. There are vast areas that a Bigfoot could hide in. And as far as like the fossil record goes or something, well, I was watching a show, I forget what channel it was on, but I think it was called Monster Hunters or something. They were looking for cryptids. And one episode, they put a carcass in the middle of the jungle, I think like in Indonesia or something. They were looking for some kind of creature out there. And they put cameras there to try to catch the creatures coming up and trying to eat the carcass. And they were surprised at how quickly this thing, like, I think it was like 24 hours, this carcass, because like the jungle heat and all the predators and stuff, the carcass just it just melted. It was gone. Like it got wiped out like real quick.
Oh, sure.
And
the carcass will, but what happened to the bones?
So when something eats a carcass, it might drag those bones and scatter them all over the place. And if you're talking about a carcass that's in somewhere that's really inhospitable, then you're never going to find those bones. They're going to be scattered. And if you do find a bone, you might not notice it as something weird, the average person. I mean, it's like a needle in a haystack. You're never going to find it.
So speaking of bones, I've seen more evidence for bones of giants, like the red-haired giants that the Native Americans in this continent talk about being, present before colonialists came around, I've actually seen pictures of those supposed corpses and stuff, which it could be staged. Yeah. But there were very, very early pictures as far as, picture technology goes. And, there was a lot of, I don't need to get too far into it, but like, I've never seen any pictures of supposed Bigfoot bones, and the ones that are, so that's a lie. I digress. That is a lie. But the ones that I have seen, to me, were obvious fakes. I've never taken a class on identifying bones, but once you've seen enough bones, especially if you've handled them yourself, like sometimes you see something and you're just like, that doesn't look like a bone. It just doesn't. It's in the shape of it, but it doesn't look like a real bone. It looks like a prop or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't have the correct textures and stuff like that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But yeah, it's the debate does continually rage on as to whether or not Bigfoot could evade us. But as far as the bones go, there are possibilities. For example, what if they bury their dead or they take their dead to a specific location that's sort of out of the way? And that perhaps could be a reason why bones are so rare. The possibilities kind of go on and on. I do kind of lean towards what you're saying is, we probably should have found some sort of trace evidence by now, maybe some fur or some bones. But on the other hand, I like to give Bigfoot the benefit of the doubt too, because these areas are vast. They're unexplored, and there's plenty of room for stuff to disappear in there. I mean, there's areas where, you know, the forest gets so thick that you can't go 10 feet off the road. You know, there's who could tell what's out there. All right, so now I'd like to talk a little bit about Bigfoot sounds. So
hey,
what?
We're edit. Sorry, I gotta pee really bad, dude. I'll be right back.
All right, I'll wait for you.
Okay, that was affecting my speech.
All right. All right, where were we? Oh yeah, supposedly Bigfoot makes certain kinds of sounds, like knocking on trees is one of the popular ones. But I always thought, so if you're out in the woods and you're camping and you knock on a tree, if I heard somebody knocking on a tree, I would knock back. I'd be, hey, it's Bigfoot. And I would knock back. Each person, they could be miles away, but both parties think that the other one is Bigfoot knocking on a tree, when in reality, it's just people knocking on trees. There's supposedly they make like strange howls and other noises. There's even a recording, I think it's called like the Sierra recording or something. But I listened to it, and it just kind of sounds like a bunch of weird noises. I didn't really seem like there's anything there that convinced me one way or the other.
I've heard a couple different of these recordings, and I mean, most of them to me sound like a couple alley cats fucking.
Yeah,
to be honest,
sounds about right. Yeah.
It's not that convincing to me. I don't know. There's also the Turtle Man, who claims, I don't know if you're familiar with the Turtle Man, but he's an expert on this matter. As a matter of fact, if the listeners are familiar with him, I think they will enjoy this.
Okay.
So he claims that the way a Sasquatch sounds goes a bit like this: woo loo loo. Woo loo loo. And so, you know, when he's going out in the forest or the swamp or what have you, searching for a Sasquatch, he says, woo loo loo. Where you at, Squatch? Woo loo loo. You know what I mean?
Well, that's weird, because I hear that exact noise every night at about midnight in my backyard. I hear a woo loo loo.
Yeah, maybe it's the Wendigo.
Yeah, I always peek back there. I never see anything, but you know, who knows? Maybe he's hiding under a rock or something.
Yeah, but that's one of those that's one of my most favorite little Bigfoot little snippets there. Like,
yeah,
'cause you get so many characters, you know, surrounding this topic, you know, and like you get people who kind of like are jump-ons, you know what I mean? Like I don't think they really believe in it. They're just like, oh yeah, Bigfoot, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I'm not saying that I fully believe in it, but like, I think there's definitely something there. But yeah, sometimes people are doing it just for the sake of doing it. You know, oh, well, we'll do the Bigfoot thing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of sightings are actually, like some people report that Bigfoot will leave a rock on top of a log. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe Bigfoot did that. Maybe some person did that.
Yeah.
Other times people will report like branches and trees that are like twisted and broken. But we're talking about like a person wouldn't have been strong enough to do that, but it's done in such a way to where it doesn't look like a natural phenomenon, like a weather or a storm did it, like wind. Mm-hmm. It looks like some big creature did it.
One of the a lot of the stories that I hear, the testimonies from people who like are out in the forest and actually supposedly come into contact with a Bigfoot, is rocks being thrown. I know that there's a couple you know, pretty compelling stories, and some of them happened a long time ago. The people who it happened to, and even their relatives, aren't even alive anymore. But there's a couple. Like, there's a lot of stories that you hear where like rocks like are thrown at people from like the peripheral, like from like distances where they can't quite see what's throwing it, but they can see a figure or a shadow or something like that. And like that's another thing that kind of like adds a little bit of a level of it's just like inconsistency almost. Like it's not inconsistency. It's like you have a hard time believing it, you know, like, all right, so it was whatever was throwing the rocks was just far enough to where you couldn't see it, but you can only see the outline or maybe a shadow or something. It's like, all right, come on, dude. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't help you believe the story, but there are so many of these stories that at the same time, like I said before, I hate to keep on like hitting upon this point, but I do believe in this subject. It is very important to keep on bringing up the totality of testimony. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I love Bigfoot. I lean towards it not being a reality because, you know, the lack of evidence and the evidence that it is present, it could be easily faked, I think, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many damn people that say that they've seen this thing, you know. Damn, I have a hard time believing there's not something out there, you know?
Well, there's a couple of explanations. For example, bears can be really, like, I forget how big, but I think some bears that can be as tall as like 12 feet tall or something on their hind legs. And bears can actually stand on their hind legs if they want to. So one theory is if you see a bear, even particularly like a bear maybe with a bad case of mange or something like that, if you see him standing on his hind legs and he's like 8 feet tall or something in the distance, you might actually misinterpret that as being a Bigfoot, especially if it's dark. And a lot of sightings are at night. It appears that Bigfoot is nocturnal. So if it's like nighttime or it's dusk and it's getting really dark out and you see like a bear walking on his hind legs for a few steps, you might kind of think that's a Bigfoot. That would look pretty freaky, I think.
That could be easily mistaken, I think.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
But speaking of hoaxes, because you're sort of touching on that, that this stuff could be easy to hoax. One of my favorite hoaxes, well, it's also a tragic hoax, and I'm including it here as sort of like people need to know that like hoaxing a Bigfoot is not really a good idea. So in 2012,
well, if you are going to do it, you need to be a little thoughtful about how you do it.
Yeah,
is the moral of that story.
Well, in 2012, Randy Lee Tenley dressed up in a ghillie suit. That's like one of those hunting suits that's sort of supposed to camouflage you, and he wanted to hoax a Bigfoot sighting. So in order to do this, he stepped out onto a highway and got ran over by a couple of cars. He didn't just step onto the shoulder. He stepped out fully into the lane right in front of a car that then immediately ran him over. They didn't think it was a Bigfoot. They think they just ran over a guy in a ghillie suit, you know? And so it can be dangerous. And furthermore, keep in mind, if you're going to dress up as a Bigfoot, there's a lot of people out there looking to shoot one so they can get a specimen. So you're probably going to get shot at. And there's a lot of hunters who are really good shots because that's what they do. So maybe don't go hoaxing Bigfoot sightings, people.
Well, whether they mistake you for a Bigfoot or not, they might think you're, you know, a deer or an elk or something or a moose, you know? Yeah. They may just see a part of you and recognize fur and be like, "Oh, that's what I'm after." You know what I mean? Like
that looks yummy.
Who knows what kind of tags they have with them, right? So, yeah, it's a risk that it's such a stupid risk to take. I think, you know, it's
right.
Just don't do it, guys, please. You know?
Yes. Yeah. If you're gonna hoax it, be smart about it. You know.
Yeah. Set it up to where like you have a friend recording you or something like that, you know, and like, you know, try to be a director about it. You know what I mean? Like try to put some thought into it, not just like, you know, be walking across a certain area of scenery, you know, try to put some context in there. You know what I mean? Like set up the scenery to where like there might be a reason why you're there and catch this by chance. You know what I mean? I'm just saying is all, if you're trying to hoax it, I'm just saying, try to make it believable.
All right, let's move along to one of the earlier stories of a Bigfoot sighting. This is called Ape Canyon. It's a gorge on Mount St. Helens. Yeah, Mount St. Helens in Washington. This happened way back on a summer night in July 1924. There was a group of miners sleeping in a small cabin that they had built themselves as sort of like a temporary shelter.
This is actually one of the stories I was alluding to. Sorry.
Yeah. During the nighttime, when they were asleep, somebody started throwing rocks at the cabin. And some of them referred to it as mountain devils that were throwing them from, and supposedly they were throwing them from all sides of the cabin. The men, you know, they were probably pretty upset and they took out their guns and started shooting in the directions they thought that the rocks were coming from. But I'm guessing visibility wasn't so good because it was nighttime and there were no streetlights. This is out in the woods.
Yeah, they had no light source, yeah.
Yeah, so this attack, apparently, when they shot at them, the rocks stopped for a little while, but then they started throwing the rocks again. And this went on, apparently, all night. And at some point throughout the night...
until dawn, pretty much,
one
right?
of the men... Yeah, till dawn. One point in the night, one of the men saw a hand reach in and try to grab an axe in the cabin. It was like a Bigfoot hand or something. but then the men drove out the hand. I don't know. It didn't say in the anecdote if they had shot it or.
I've heard two different accounts of this particular part of the tale, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I heard that the Bigfoot actually entered the cabin, and then they had to like fight him off and make him retreat. And then the other part is it was just an arm that reached in and tried to grab an axe. But I'm not sure which one is the actual account.
Well, probably neither of them. I mean, does a Bigfoot know what an axe is? Is he going to really go into the? Yeah,
it might.
Maybe that's
I mean,
that's true. That's true.
It might. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what the cognitive ability of a Bigfoot is?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, anyways, at dawn, at sunrise, they left their cabin and they saw a Bigfoot out there, and they shot it, and it tumbled into the gorge and sort of disappeared. They found no trace of it after that, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So after the fact, one of the men, Fred Beck, ended up writing a book about the incident. And in the book, he claims there was a lot of weird things in the book, but the one that caught my attention was he claims that these are actually extra-dimensional beings. And I thought that was pretty interesting because way back in 1924, I didn't know we had extra-dimensional beings way back then. I thought that was a more recent invention.
And the one thing also from his account, I don't understand how he came to that conclusion. Like what evidence? Like, I mean, he didn't really state any evidence for that. Like I don't know, how did he come to that conclusion? That's all I'm asking. Like, that's a very fantabulous thing to say. Is all I'm saying.
Well, it could explain why they're so elusive, I suppose. But one of my favorite parts about this story is actually the skeptical explanation. So according to the skeptics, a group of youths or boys, perhaps Boy Scout campers or, young people in general, they were the ones throwing the rocks from above onto the cabin. And that explains the whole sighting. My only problem with that is that what child is going to sit there being fired at by guns and continue to throw rocks? And what child is going to have the endurance to throw rocks all night long? It's pretty typical with these skeptical explanations that I've pointed out in the past. Why not just say you don't believe the story? I don't believe the story. It's that easy. You don't have to make up a story that's even more ridiculous than the one you're being presented with.
Well, you wouldn't want to be rude, right? And call someone a liar.
Oh yeah, right? Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Oh sure, we believe you're extra dimensional Bigfoots throwing rocks at your cabin. Like, why would they do that? Why would a Bigfoot throw rocks at your cabin all night? I don't know. Just say you don't believe them. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, I thought that was a fun story. It's one of the earlier ones, and I don't know how much stock I put into it, but it's still kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a interesting one, and like I said, that was the one that I was alluding to earlier when I was talking about Bigfoot throwing rocks and stuff from far enough away initially to where like they could just see their silhouettes and stuff, and then. Yeah, then supposedly they did come closer. It makes no sense. Like, I don't know. There's a couple things about that story that doesn't really make any sense. But then the story is so old. Also, what has been misconstrued? You know what I mean?
Right. It sort of becomes a legend at some point.
Yeah, and people, that old game of telephone. You know what I mean? Where facts don't, they become something other than facts. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, who knows how that happened.
Next up, let's talk a little bit about, we can't talk about Bigfoot without talking a little bit about the Patterson Gimlin film. That's a must-have topic for this episode.
You gotta touch on the Patterson film, yes.
Yeah, so just to review a little bit about it, this was filmed in October 20th, 1967 in Northern California by Robert Patterson and Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin. And it was filmed, it was 954 frames of film, totaling about 59.5 seconds. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's been multiple episodes and books and everything done about this film, but there's some interesting things surrounding it. For example, they actually went to the area with the intention of filming a Bigfoot. So for me, that's sort of an interest. That's a suspicious detail. They were looking for it and they just so happened to catch it. I don't know, but maybe they were looking for it and they caught it.
Could it happen? Yeah, for sure, it could have happened. But the angle of the film, and also like the creature was walking away, not towards, as well.
Right.
And also like it was. I don't know. There's this thing, like there's so many different explanations of this film, and like different reasonings of like why things might be the way they are in the film or what have you. Mm-hmm. I've heard so many good explanations every which way. Like this film, I don't know what to believe, but I kind of think I lean towards it. It's probably more likely it's a fabrication for a couple different reasons, but we'll get into that though. I want you to talk about it more before we get into the actual, like, what we think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So they were in the area riding around on horseback, and when they saw it, they estimated it was between 6'6" and 7'6", so 7 feet 6 inches tall. So it was somewhere in that ballpark. So pretty tall, but it's short enough there are plenty of people on the planet who fall within that range. So it's not necessarily like one of these 10-foot depictions that you're maybe familiar with in some of the movies. But so anyways, when they saw it, they were maybe 80 feet away when he was filming it. And they caught it for a short period, and then it disappeared into the undergrowth. There were prints that it left behind, and they did make plaster casts of those prints. They showed the film in theaters around the country. They made some money from that. There wasn't much scientific interest in the film, but it became national and international news, and pretty much anybody and everybody who's interested has seen it at some point. So it became a real phenomenon. Like it is probably the most noticeable or most notorious film or aspect of the Bigfoot phenomenon, I guess I could say.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so let's talk a little bit about the details of the film that might be sort of suspect. One of the things for me is when you're watching him walk, the Bigfoot's walking, or it's actually a she, when she turns her head, she doesn't just turn her head, she turns her entire upper body, like her entire torso, towards the camera.
Yeah.
And just the way everything is framed, it looks like a setup, like they intended, okay, make sure when you're walking, look towards the camera or whatever. And if you're in a bulky suit, you wouldn't be able to turn just your head, you would turn your entire body. But
your freedom of mobility would be definitely lessened.
But just think about, like, not just a person, but, chimpanzees, gorillas, whatever, anything sort of related in the monkey category. They don't turn their entire body necessarily when they turn their head. They just turn their head. That's what your neck is for. So that little detail kind of makes me suspicious right off the bat.
Yeah, there's a lot more freedom of movement, I guess you'd say, in the way that they move.
Right. So anything you want to point out about the film before I get on to another point?
Well, I remember us talking in the lead up to this episode here. I remember us talking about like the way the appearance of the fur on the creature or the suit, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So the pectoral muscles were heavily layered in fur, and throughout the animal kingdom, it's not very common for primates to have a lot of fur on their pectoral muscles. That's correct, right?
Well, I think what you mean is boobies. It looks like it has some breastises.
Yeah.
Because it looks like a female.
They're a little pronounced and quite succulent, but I didn't want to get too much into how I enjoy that, but I do.
You said uncommon, but as far as I know,
what I mean to say is I don't mind hairy nipples.
Right. Hey, everybody's into something. Nothing wrong with that.
Somebody has to be, right?
Right. Yeah.
Let's keep on going. Let's just keep on going.
You said it was uncommon, but to my knowledge, there are a total of 0 primates that have hair on their breasts, and that makes sense because let's say if they're breastfeeding a baby, that baby or whatever you call an ape baby, they have to be able to like suck on that nipple to get some milk. If there's a bunch of hair in the way, they're not going to be able to do it. So it makes sense, and that's another detail that sort of makes it seem like it might not be legitimate. It might be a suit, because if you were making a suit, you wouldn't put that much detail into it. You wouldn't know that was the case. You would just put hair everywhere.
Well, you might put a high level of detail, but you might not put that detail on the level of practicality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which might show up, obviously. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of, I don't know if we need to go over like every single point of contention with this film, but there's a lot of stuff. Like the primate experts point out certain things, like the buttocks of the thing are not separated enough. They're sort of close together, like they're, like molded plastic or something, or latex. They don't look like a real butt. It looks like, more like a suit. On the other hand, there are...
I'll just say real quick.
Yeah.
Just real quick. You have boob guys and you have butt guys. I'll say with all confidence, I'm a butt guy. I'm an ass guy. Boobs are great. They're wonderful. But ass is a necessity. I'm just saying.
What do you call somebody who's into both? Is there a term for that?
You call that a Renaissance man.
All right.
Okay?
It sounds like my kind of guy.
I'm much more single-faceted. I'm simple-minded. I'm not on that level. Okay, I don't have the ability to appreciate both at once necessarily on the highest level. You know what I mean? But my own particular, preference, I'm an ass guy. So when I looked at that ass, it didn't seem real to me. Like there was a level of fakeness. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't seem naturally occurring according to the frame and structure of that body. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I don't know how I recognize this, but I did. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Hey,
it's
it's just instinct, man.
Yeah, it is. That's nothing but instinct. That is the instinct that I had.
Okay, so there are a couple of pro sides to this too, though. Some special effects people from the film industry, from Hollywood or whatever, they said that they would not be able to replicate a suit like this. But on the other hand, maybe they could. I don't know. But that's wait, hold on. Let me do that over again. That was fucking stupid.
No, I was still, dude.
That was solid. That was a solid effort. Yeah. A for effort, right?
No, it was. I was still laughing about the thing where I said I was an ass man.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. I found a lot of self-satisfaction in that. I hope you keep that in the episode. I like that. I don't know if it was presented as well as it could have been, but I enjoyed the fuck out of that right now.
You're a Bigfoot ass man.
a Bigfoot assinologist.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So in 2002. A guy named Philip Morris, I'm assuming not the cigarette company, but an actual fella. He's a costume maker, and he said that he sold a gorilla costume to Patterson through a mail order, which it kind of, if the suit was so good that it would be impossible for somebody to actually replicate, a mail order suit costume, that's going to be a pretty basic costume, wouldn't it? I mean, I don't know. So,
well, all right. So here's the thing. There are very many movies that have been made with ape or gorilla creatures. Mm-hmm. There were either animatronics or there were a person wearing a suit. There's plenty of examples of the level of sophistication and ability of that industry to create a suit. Whoever said that, I think was a bit naive. Either that or they weren't up on par to the level of ability of other individuals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've seen, I mean, I don't know. There's countless movies. I don't even need to even mention a single movie. Just go look into it, bro. Like.
How about you start with John Carpenter's The Thing? Cause that was pre-CGI. That was all real actual effects. And
that was all craft.
Yeah. I think it still holds up today. It looks pretty good, actually.
Yes, it does. Yeah, because it was made well and made with detail to it, real detail to attention. According to actual, information you had to draw upon within the animal kingdom. You know what I mean? So they did a damn good job. Holy crap, they do. And there's other examples. There's plenty of other examples. But like.
one of the things that he said that Morris, moving on back to that point, or moving back to Morris saying that he sent a suit for him. He says that after Patterson received the suit, he called and asked how to make the shoulders bigger and how to make the arms longer. And he told Patterson to use football shoulder pads and to hold sticks in his hands within the suit to make the arms longer. And there's a couple of other points, like people have tried to say that the way that the Bigfoot walks in the video cannot be replicated by a person in a suit. You just can't walk that way. But Morris,
I've heard both sides of that argument, though.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, here's a quote by Morris where he talks about stuff like that. He says, "The Bigfoot researchers say that no human can walk that way in the film. Oh yes, they can. When you're wearing long clown's feet, you can't place the ball of your foot down first. You have to put your foot down flat. Otherwise, you'll stumble. Another thing, when you put on the gorilla head, you can only turn your head maybe a quarter of the way. And to look behind you, you've got to turn your head and your shoulders and your hips. Plus, the shoulder pads in the suit are in the way of the jaw. That's why the Bigfoot turns and looks the way he does in the film. He has to twist his entire upper body." Yeah, and I kind of mentioned that earlier too. Like that's one of the things that catches my attention the most. Yeah.
When you have something you're putting over yourself, whether it be a helmet, football pads, especially, right? And that's a pretty good example. And a lot of people, I think, will be able to relate to that more than normal, at least. But any of those type of things you put on yourself will make you move like that. That makes a lot of sense to me. It really does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just to further sort of put the nail in the coffin of this video, in 1998, Bob Hieronymus, I guess you'd say. I don't know.
I like Hieronymus.
Hieronymus, yeah. I think that's it. So in 1998, Bob Hieronymus came out as the guy in the suit. And he's not only him, but some of his friends and family corroborated his story and said that he had a suit that matched the one in the film. Like they saw him trying it on and stuff. But there were some inconsistencies in his details with what Morris had said in 2002. So some people think that for whatever reason, he's saying that he was the guy in the suit. I don't want to spend too much time on Bob Hieronymus, but his story does seem to have some credibility to it. But we don't know for sure. I don't know that they actually ever produced the suit. Who knows where that is. So people like to say that him and Morris are just kind of making this stuff up. But on the other hand, they seem pretty credible to me. So I guess as you guys probably can tell, I'm not a huge fan of this Patterson Gimlin film. To me, it looks fake. I think it's fake front and back. I just don't believe it at all. What about you, ETA?
The film at face level is compelling because it is grainy enough to where like you can't see enough detail to really be like for real about what your opinion is of the actual visual that you're observing. It looks compelling, but to me, I don't believe that footage is real because there's enough inconsistencies that we've already talked about that just give me pause. You know what I mean? Like it's not enough. I don't believe the film is real, but I do have hope towards Bigfoot in general being a real thing in somewhere in the world. Right. Because so everything we've been talking about here has been North American related, you know what I mean? But it doesn't matter if you go to Asia, you'll have a lot of the same types of stories, we've talked about the Dyatlov Pass, which has a strong connection supposedly to a possibility of some type of Bigfoot or Yeti creature being involved, right?
Yeah, that is one of the leading explanations for that incident.
Yeah, and actually, if you happen to be so inclined to believe in Yeti or Bigfoot, what have you, it could definitely explain some of the stuff that happened there, But there's so much stories. There's so many stories, about Bigfoot or Yeti. They go back throughout the historical record. I have a hard time believing that there's not something there somewhere. You know what I mean? I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I couldn't tell you which story is the most credible, the most believable. I mean, I have my opinions on which ones are maybe a little bit more or a little bit less, but I don't have a straightforward answer on that, to be quite honest, whether I believe is Bigfoot real or not. I have my doubts, but I gotta be honest, I leaned a little bit towards it being a possibility, just because the totality of the evidence, how many people around the whole damn world throughout historical record that have said that they experienced something like this. You know what I mean?
Right. I totally agree with you. It's not just the Pacific Northwest, but there are stories all over the world with similarities to the Bigfoot stories, and not just modern times either, going back throughout history. It's hard to dismiss it outright, even though the stories we talked about today, the ones, the Patterson Gimlin and some of the other ones, a lot of the ones we mentioned specifically don't seem credible. But the reason I chose to talk about these ones this time was because these are some of like the biggest stories. So I felt they were good to cover first. Like you have to talk about the Patterson Gimlin. You just can't, there's no way.
Yeah. I mean, these are the things that most people are going to be the most familiar with, And by the way, I mean, you want to get into Bigfoot. I mean, holy crap. Some of the stuff going on in South America is more compelling than what's going on here, I think. But we're just not like you and we live in North America, so we're much more connected to these stories. You know what I mean? So we're not so in tune with what's being described down there. But from what I've heard, like it's basically a very similar creature. I think it's probably the same thing if it is real, just like described from a different perspective. Really, that's it. You know what I mean?
Well, there's actually another cryptid. This is real, by the way. I'm not making this up. It's sort of, I don't know if it's related to Bigfoot or not, but I like to think that it's Bigfoot's little cousin, and it's actually called a booger. Have you heard of this?
I haven't. I'm not familiar with that. I don't think, no.
Yeah, it's a cryptid called a booger. It's just like a little monkey, I guess, or something. I don't know.
I mean, the first thing I thought was nerds. Like, nerds. That was one of the best character in any ridiculous movie ever is Booger.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that guy was awesome. Holy shit, was he awesome.
I want to do an episode on boogers just so I can title the episode, episode whatever, boogers. Like people are clicking through their podcast player. They're like, these guys did an hour and a half on boogers. What the hell?
Dude, that should be a goal. That should be a goal. We should try to find like an ability somewhere to, an hour and a half on boogers.
Yeah.
Whatever related topic. Yeah. Oh, that would be, you know what? I've just decided right now. I think that is a, one of the boxes I want to check off before I get low. You know what I mean?
Right. All right. We'll definitely put it on the list then. For sure. But
I could dig that.
But yeah, like you were saying, I remain optimistic about Bigfoot. I don't really feel all that invested one way or the other. Like, if it's all fake, like, whatever, I don't really care that much. But if it's real, my attitude is if Bigfoot's real, the evidence will come out sooner or later, like conclusive evidence, not just anecdotal evidence, but actual real proof, like a carcass or something. It'll show up, or we'll find some bones or something like that. But if we don't, I don't really care that much because there's still a lot of really fun stories. And maybe that's all it is. Maybe somehow this legend has permeated the world, throughout cultures that shouldn't have been able to know each other. And it's all it is. It's just a fun story, but maybe it's real. That's kind of where I sit.
Well, like I said, maybe it's that one legend somehow, some way that has a commonality between all cultures somehow.
Yeah.
Like, however improbable that may seem, every culture that I've ever, besides many like very small indigenous, cultures, like, shamanic traditions that are still around nowadays, I don't think that was the right term I was looking for, but anyways, whatever. The story is prevalent everywhere.
Yeah. And there are certain stories, like let's say, for example, the Great Flood. Every culture has a Great Flood story. And when you go back, it turns out there actually was a great flood. I think we mentioned it when we're talking about Göbekli Tepe. There's like a global flood. So sometimes just because it's like passed down through word of mouth doesn't mean that it's all fake. Some of that stuff is based in reality, even a distant reality that nobody really remembers anymore. It might still be based on something real somehow.
Yeah, I guess yeah, exactly. Thank you for that right there, because what I was getting at is there is a reason why this story is remembered and passed on and continued. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much all I had to say about the Bigfoot Power Hour this time around. You got anything else to add, Agent ETA?
I mean, give me some more whiskey and I could probably add some more shit, but as far as anything, any little bit of a thing that I had to contribute, I think I did.
All right, cool. Yeah, if you guys like this, we'll definitely do another Power Hour. This time, maybe I'll focus on positive proof instead of stuff that doesn't seem so credible. But yeah, it's a fun topic, and I'd definitely be willing to discuss it again myself.
Oh, I'm sure we will touch on it at some point.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Yes, and Happy New Year, you filthy motherfuckers. We love all of you.
Yeah, we're actually recording this on New Year's Day. So it is our New Year. It won't be out for a few days because I still have to edit it and upload it and stuff. But it is Happy New Year's, so Happy New Year's, everybody.
Yes. And thank you for listening to us. I can't tell you how many times like I think about it, and like I don't like from my own perspective, like I find it hard to believe that like anybody would want to listen to my fucking dumb ass, you know. But whoever, all of you guys are willing to listen to us, thank you. Like it's from the bottom of my heart, thank you, because it is humbling. It really is. So thank you, and we'll see you again next time.